Alright everybody, welcome to another episode of Psycho's Platters, always powered by coffee each and every time. Got a White Castle mug today. So, what is Mighty Psycho doing right now in this episode? Well, how about this? I tripped on a nice little video a few days back from Dan over at Dots and Loops. That's right. Vinyl Tag 2023, he put out 101 questions. But I only know one person that went and did all 101 questions. And yes, Rach, you're a nutter. I'm just kidding, I think. Anyways, point of the matter is, Dan simply said, hey, answer 10 of the questions, get yourself an entry. 20 questions, 2 entries. Do the whole 101, you get 10 entries. For a very cool original Seeds album and the first Black Sabbath album from 1970. How awesome is that? I think it is. But basically, I don't have time for 101 questions. I just don't. 20 questions would be great, but we're going to go with 10 due to time constraints for me. So here we go. This ought to be fun anyway, in my opinion. So, I've seen some of the other people's videos and such on this one. I took question number 1. I'll give you all the question numbers as we're going along to what I picked. Question number 1, Todd Rundgren involvement. Now, Todd Rundgren, of course, the man's a genius. He's a wizard and a true star. Anywho, so he got himself pretty much started out in his own professional career in Woody's Truck Stop, the Nas, his own solo career, Utopia. You know where I'm going on this. But if it's one thing, though, is that every album that he seems to touch ends up being quite interesting. Okay? And 9 times out of 10, he's going to also perform on it, along with sometimes Utopia, sometimes not. Now, I'm a big fan of the 70s and early 80s work of the Tubes. That's right. It took me a while to find this album. From 1979, the Tubes Remote Control. That's right. Produced by Todd Rundgren. Now, believe it or not, he did 2. You also have the 1985 album Love Bomb. Oh boy, that one. Which also got them off Capitol Records. But this album here was the last album that the Tubes made for A&M Records. They did, after this, start an album called Suffer for Sound in 1980. If you get the CD version of this, you get 4 tracks from that 1980 unreleased album. But Remote Control, Todd Rundgren involvement, Utopia loosely here too. TV is King is my favorite off of here. Why some current band hasn't attempted to do an update on this song is beyond me. It should have been a bigger hit than what it was. If I remember correctly, it only made it to number 40 in the singles chart. The bigger tune was Primetime, which is your duet between Fee Waybill and Reece Styles. That was the front. Here's the back. Of course, they borrowed, this is literally off of the Hollywood Squares set, and they quickly did this. If I also remember correctly, they showed up in an episode of Hollywood Squares too around this time frame. But and then this one here, as you can see, the baby is looking at this very unique television device. I'm led to believe that it's the only one in existence at that time and made for the purposes of the photograph. Rest in peace, Rick Anderson and Reece Styles. Where are you, Ree? There you go. From this wonderful band, the Tubes, Remote Control, 1979, Todd Rundgren involvement. Now, question number 2, album title. That is fewer than 5 letters. Now, of course, maybe one of the ultimate ones would be is if you happen to have the Jethro Tull album A, that would be your 1 letter, but I don't have that album. But you know that Psycho is a huge fan of what band? Oh boy, here we go. The old regulars know who this is, but I'm doing a slight twist. So, question number 2, the title that has less than 5 letters. Why, it's the monkey's head, that's right. Japanese import. See? And look, I even got this is a early 80s reissue though, unfortunately. I wish it was an original RCA, but you even got the Obi strip on here. I really always liked this. I like the Mylar cover, that's the US press has got, but here's this, and then of course only in the Japanese do you get this in color, okay? So, very, very cool. The monkey's head. One of the best movie soundtracks of 1968, and from a rock band. I mean, you got Porpoise Song. Oh, what a beautiful thing. As we go along, Circle Sky. Do I have to do this all over again? Just wonderful stuff. Really, really good stuff. Monkey's head for the answer for question number 2. Question 3. What record from high school do you still own? Now, saying that, I ended up getting this in my freshman year of high school, alright? I didn't get it brand new at that time, but I did end up getting it in my freshman year. And believe it or not, it was thanks to MTV as to how I ended up finding this album. And then I got to look at their videos of the back catalog stuff. These guys only, in the original lineup, only made 2 albums and an EP. And that's such a damn shame, because you know what? This lineup was the best lineup. I'm talking about Pretenders 2, that's right. Now on this one here, of course, you got Message of Love, I Go to Sleep, Talk of the Town. I love those. Day After Day. All 4 of those ended up as videos on MTV. And of course, they do a cover of Louie Louie too. Here's the front, here's the back, and of course, unfortunately, after this album came out, both of these band members ended up dead of drug overdoses. Although saying this, and this was quite interesting to me anyway, Pete Farndon, if I remember correctly, he for a short time was involved with one of the members of the Clash. They were going to end up trying to do a band, but of course that didn't happen on that. Alright, question 8. A good $5 record everyone should own. Now, this band is one of them. Actually, I really like the output from the 80s from this band. The first album, great. Really great, but I wasn't going to show that. To me, that's pedestrian, alright? Their third album should have really only been an EP. But the second album, Asia's Alpha, that's right. This should have been a bigger, better record, okay? And by the way, signed by Carl Palmer, that's right. Of course, you got Don't Cry, The Smile Has Left Your Eyes, Never in a Million Years, Eye to Eye, Midnight Sun, lots of good stuff here. Unfortunately, after this album came out, the tension between John Wetton and Steve Howe just got to be too much. Greg Lake got called in briefly from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Hey, we got Asia and Asia. If you remember that from MTV, it's also, of course, out now on vinyl, CD, all that other stuff. Asia's Alpha for your $5 record. Of course, you're not going to find Carl Palmer's autograph on there for $5. Question 15. Record with a horrible pressing. Now, I actually was trying to find the other album that I was going to tell you about, and I'll tell you about that one as soon as I tell you about this one. Now, technically, the first pressing of this album was actually fine. It was the repress, the second press, that was the bastard in this little bit. So, from 1976 on Private Stock Records, Natural Gas, ladies and gentlemen, pardon the glare, signed by Mark Clark when I met him when he played bass for Davy Jones in 2005. Now, here you've got Natural Gas, technically another supergroup. Mark Clark, of course, goes back to Uriah Heep days, Rainbow, and then, like I said, he ended up being a touring bass player for the Monkees in the 80s and the 90s tours, and then for Davy Jones in the mid-O's. You also got Joey Malland, who he left Badfinger and went on to these guys. This band was formed in 1975. And then also Jerry Shirley, drummer of Humble Pie. And then, the other member, that's right, Peter Wood. And if I remember correctly, Peter Wood, I think, had some involvement with Al Stewart, unless I'm getting that mixed up here, okay? So here's your back and then your front here. So the first pressing of this went over very, very well, okay? Now, here's the thing. How fortuitous, yes, I'm going to use that dollar word, how fortuitous that Natural Gas, mainly it was because Jerry, through management, put a little bug in Peter Frampton's ear. The Frampton Comes Alive tour, all over summer of 75, right? Yeah, summer of 75, fall of 75. So, then the next thing you know here is that Natural Gas is the opening act for all of the dates of Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive tour. So they get automatic exposure built in. The first pressing, 50,000 copies on Private Stock Records, which was co-owned at one time by Frankie Valli, right? 4 Seasons. And also alleged, not because of Frankie, but alleged mob ties to this label too. So, first pressing, no problem. It's the second pressing we're talking about. After they ended, and this is a first press, by the way. Very, that needs to be cleaned, but it is near minty. And a really good record too. Seek this out when you can. But like I said, be careful, because the first pressings, they sound great. The second pressings, how do I explain this? It's like the pitch is off. Alright, the pitch is off. There's something else wrong with it too. But thankfully enough, I never came across one of those. What happened though is when that repress came out, the customers were complaining about it. They ran another 50,000 on the second press, okay? Needless to say, 90% of the people returned the album. Private Stock, pretty much by that time, Blondie's first album came out. They pulled the plug. That was the end of Natural Gas. So, second pressing of Natural Gas is your bad pressing. Now, question 22. I own this record because someone said I should. Now, this is not my original vinyl, but this flashed back to the memory. So my buddy Jim Ross up in Illinois, me and him, we were thick like thieves from like about 87 to 90, okay? And I remember one time, he goes off and he says, Paul, there's this new album. You got to get this album. You have to. And he played me the cassette, okay? And I went to Musicland at the mall in the next town over. Went to the Musicland and bought this damn thing. I'm not kidding you. I went through 3 copies of this cassette in my car and my home use. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. I know a lot of people talk about this album. In fact, it probably could simply also be in the overplayed record question later on. But the thing is that this record did kind of make me go, oh wow, when I got it, okay? And there's very few friend recommendations I got. But Guns N' Roses, I wish it was the original, okay, but it's this pressing I found years later. Alright, 27 question, number 27, record that makes me levitate. Now, For me, it's if I'm going to listen to an album that's going to get me to feel that way, it's either going to be Levitate or it's going to feel like I am floating on the ocean. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So this album here, which I tripped on about 2 years ago, from an excellent 70s prog rock band that does not get enough love. I'm speaking of, from 1972, Nectar, A Tab in the Ocean. The whole 15.5-minute side one, oh, you bet. You bet that thing makes me levitate, float on the water, whatever. All right? I mean, to get to hear these guys play it live in 2020 still had that feeling on me, but nothing beats this 1972 Passport Records US version. Here's the front, here's the back. Tab in the Ocean, one of the records that I love that makes me levitate. There's also another one that some of Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush's work will do that to me. Some of the 70s work. All right, question number 37. A scary record, unintended or not. This goes back. This one here was gifted to me by Shanny Hanny, who is a semi-regular on my channel in live streams. But I had this album when I was a kid, and it still creeped me out at times. Good evening, it's Alfred Hitchcock presents ghost stories for young people. I know, a kiddie record, right? I could have gone demonic. I could have gone off. I know. Like I said, this is because of personal memory. But another one, I guess, that I could say would be the beginning to Black Sabbath, Zero the Hero, that song from Born Again, or Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil. But when I was a kid, that record scared me. Question 51, the 90s. Now, I know maybe you're thinking, oh good, he's going to show a 90s band. Not in this case. Now, I'm hoping that this question is acceptable in the answer that I'm giving. It's not a 90s band per se, because I don't have many 90s bands on vinyl from the 90s, but I do happen to have a 70s band that cut a record in 1991, but it wasn't released in the United States. This is a German press, a West German press. I showed this a long way back. Lynyrd Skynyrd's 1991 album, and it says promotional copy only, not for resale, but it's stock label for Atlantic Records. Guys, I always like the original Skynyrd lineup from the 70s, but truthfully, this 91 album, which reunites all the surviving members from that tragedy from 1977, it's a damn good album. This thing, seriously, really cooks, and it's got the spirit of Skynyrd in it, with, of course, new singer of a couple years, Johnny Van Sant. But Skynyrd, 1991, Smokestack Lightning was the single off of this. Here's the back. Really good stuff for the 90s. Lastly, Disco Delight. Now, disco comes in different forms to me. Obviously, if you're thinking of disco, you could be thinking of Bee Gees, Donna Summer, that kind of stuff. Or you could go a little bit differently and go Kisses, I Was Made for Loving You, or the Stones' Miss You. Or if you really want to go kind of strange, Grateful Dead's Shakedown Street. Yes, that was their attempt at disco. But you know, disco, other than being the typical 4/4/4 on the floor beat or even faster, this one here's a guilty pleasure for me. I was so happy to find this at a garage sale for 50 cents years back. Hot Chocolate's Everyone's a Winner. When I'm listening to this, and this is the 7-minute, 17-second version, there's 3 different versions of this single, but this is your disco 12-inch, alright, from Infinity. Excuse me. So, this here is a disco-fied funk piece. Errol sings great on here. It just awesome, awesome record. I know everybody is used to "You Sexy Thing." No, 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 no. This is what I like. This was the top for me anyway. Hot chocolate. So Dan, I hope I kind of answered all the questions here, and I hope everybody went off and enjoyed this little video, and hopefully I get a nice entry in the contest. And you know what? Thanks for putting this contest on, Dan. This was pretty fun. What else can I say? Greetings to everybody. Take care. God bless. Rock on from Paul, the Mighty Psycho. Remember, always powered by coffee each and every time. Cheers.